You're listening to the Voices of the Vic podcast with Ben Aiton and Mike Duffy.
Hello and welcome to Voices of the Vic with me, Mike Duffy, and as always, my co-host Ben Aiton. Ben, how are you doing this Saturday evening?
Yeah, very well, mate. It's always better after you've watched your team the night before and they pick up a victory, 3 important points at Pride Park. So yeah, all good, mate. Here, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Like you say, it's a bit weird that we're recording this on a Saturday and we haven't played. Like today, almost feels like it's a Sunday because I watched us play yesterday. So yeah, that's taken a bit of getting used to, but I've sort of been half keeping an eye on the other results rolling in. Most importantly, we are now above Luton because Stoke beat them. So that is brilliant news.
Brilliant news, yeah.
Yeah, and we're in the top 6 as well. So yeah,
Results
happy
kind
day.
of went our way. I know it's too early to look at the table and that, but
Yeah.
teams dropped points. I think Reading and Bristol City both drew today. Blackburn lost. Luton, like you mentioned, they lost as well. So results kind of went our way, but it's too early to be saying that, really.
It is, but at the same time, you make a very good point. So we'll delve. Unfortunately, Ben, we do have to speak about the game that we won on Friday because it wasn't the most best game ever. That won't go down in the history books. We'll start at the very beginning, as always, in terms of the team lineups. Now, before the game, everybody was buzzing because we knew that Capoue was staying, Hughes was staying, Deeney was staying, and probably, most importantly, Sarr was staying. We tweeted off our podcast account, that the Athletic and Adam Leventhal said that Sarr is very likely to stay and will play against Derby that night. Now, obviously, we aren't in the know, so we weren't to know that wasn't to be the case, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. Just before we talk about the team lineups, Ben, I'll just briefly, how important is it that we've kept those players that I've just reeled off there?
Massively important. They're only going to boost the squad. I still think that I don't want to go into too much detail so early on in the podcast because I know we're going to do it a bit further on, but I feel like we're only in second gear at the moment, and getting those people back, it's only going to help us move up the gears, isn't it? And it's going to make us so much stronger. The massive one was keeping Ismail Sarr. I know there was a cheeky last day bid from a Premier League club, but managed to keep hold of him. That's absolutely massive.
Yeah, absolutely massive it was. But we were all sort of left a little bit disappointed when the team news come out. I know I certainly was. I'm sure you'll tell me how you'll feel in a minute, Ben. But the team news come out, and there was no Sarr, and there was no Capoue. And I believe the reasoning for Sarr was he'd just missed the coach because he'd not long got back from international duty. I'm again not sure how true that is, but a little bit disappointing. I'll read through the team now. So it was Foster in goal. It was Wilmot, Troost-Ekong and Kabasele with a back three, so a debut for Troost-Ekong. I can't wait to talk about his performance. The wing-backs were Kiko Femenea and Jeremy Ngakia. The three in the middle, the middle guys, if you like, was probably, if you look at it as a 3-5-2, the three in the middle was Quina, Chalabat and Cleverley, and then you had Sema sort of supporting Pedro up top. So when that team news come out and we didn't see Capoue on the bench and we didn't see Sarr on the bench, because or in starting 11 for that matter of fact, because we saw a couple of players which I perhaps didn't expect to see coming on the bench. We had Backman on the bench, Cathcart, Garner, Hungbo, Murray, Phillips and Stevenson. Now, listeners, I actually called that Hungbo was going to be on the bench yesterday. I said to Ben, Ben, I'm calling it now, he's going to be on the bench. But how surprised was you at that lineup full stop, like including the players on the bench as well?
I'm very surprised, considering we like you said, we saw that tweet from Adam Leventhal, and he said that Sol was staying and that he was going to play against Derby. But it makes sense that he didn't play if he only came back from international duty for the day before. But I think actually Senegal didn't actually. Senegal played last weekend, and then they had a second game. But that second game was actually cancelled.
Yes,
So I don't know
right.
why he didn't end up coming back a bit sooner. But look, it doesn't really matter now. If Ivic wanted to play with the players that he was training with at the start of the week, because you're obviously going to work on the shape, how you're going to line up, and organising how you're going to play against Derby and try and stop them from playing against us. So, yeah, you can kind of see why he didn't bring Sarr back in, and you can probably see why Cathcart didn't start. I think Econ came back a day earlier than Cathcart, and we didn't really have another centre-back option on the bench, did we? So
No.
that's probably why Econ started. But yeah, not a bad starting lineup though, considering the changes. But I probably would have preferred James Garner starting over Chalobah in the middle.
Yeah, I've got to be careful what I say here, because it wasn't long ago that I was, we put a snippet out and I said on the podcast that I feel he's being made a bit of a scapegoat. But I certainly would have put James Garner in there. Possibly I would have changed him for Quinner, because I don't think Quinner was as effective as maybe Ivic would have preferred him to be. But I think in terms of the starting lineup, Ben, I think you're absolutely spot on. I think Ivic has had a certain group of players to work with, and Ivic is a type of player that, type of manager rather, that he's got a certain group of players. Yes, our star man might be available, but Ivic isn't going to let the other players down that he's sort of worked with all that week. And I do like that. Like, we knew when we did a bit of research on him joining, you cast your minds back to the podcast when we announced that Ivic was the new manager. I know you did a bit of research, Ben, whereby he's not afraid to leave big star players out. And although, it's probably not looking at it as in Sarr's, throwing his toys out the pram and he's leaving him out, but he's worked with a group of players for the week or the 2 weeks, the international break. And yes, Sarr may have been available, but Ivic has stuck to his guns and he said, well, no, we're working with this group of players.
Yeah.
Yes, Sarr is very good, but I'm not going to bring it in. I'm not going to bring him in. I'm going to trust these players that I've been working with. And I think that's brilliant on one side. And also, he has been away, and you do point out that Sarr was due to play a second game, but it was cancelled for, I believe it was COVID-19 reasons. But he could have played, but I'm happy. It saves him for another game. And look, we could be sitting here on Wednesday seeing the team lineup, and it could have Capoue in, it could have Hughes in, it could have Sarr in. We could be really, frothing at the mouth looking at this lineup. But one player I want to point out, Ben, who you actually tweeted off the podcast account, who had a solid game, Trooster Kong. What a debut to make! I thought he patrolled the defence brilliantly. I thought he was brilliant, and I'm hoping that injury is just a minor one, and it's just a precaution, because it looked like he was holding his hamstring when he come off.
Yeah, he's been here like 2 minutes, and he's already organising the back line. It was great to see. That's the kind of leadership we needed at the back.
Yep.
Really solid debut from Econ. Was really impressive. It was a shame he went off, like you say, with like a slight hamstring injury, I believe. But it might be very minor. It's more precaution more than anything. Like, he doesn't want to make it more serious than what it actually is. Ivic will probably be hoping it isn't too serious as well, because he did show real leadership in that centre of defence, and he looks a great addition to that back line. We've massively upgraded in that position just by signing him. If you look back last season, we had Mariappa. No offence to Mariappa, but
no, good guy.
His best days are behind him.
Yep.
We just haven't really improved that back line at all, and he's just came straight in and he's fitted in really well. I was pleased to see him play in the centre as well, and they pushed out Cabaselli out to the right as well. I thought that was better. You couldn't have him on the right hand side of that for back three.
Yeah, and do you not think this is very typical of Watford? Troost-Ekong is exactly the type of the mould of player that we needed last season.
Two seasons ago, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Obviously, you've said Mariappa played a lot last season. Not the most well. I mean, he's certainly vastly experienced, but as you've rightly pointed out, as much as a Watford legend, if you like, he may be, or Watford through and through, I should say. His
Craig
best days are
Dawson
behind
last
him.
year as well. Yeah.
Craig Dawson, exactly. So Troost-Ekong, really, yes, 2 seasons ago we could have done with him, but last season, even if we'd had him just last season, it would have been brilliant. But I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Ben, and I think you also hit the nail on the head last podcast as well, which another snippet which we also put out. He's just the sort of player with the leadership skills that we're looking for, and we haven't had at centre back for ages. Like, it was actually quite interesting to see the fans' point of view when we put that snippet out, who reminded them as a defender, the last sort of player that we had as sort of leadership. Not many recent ones come up. I think I saw Gabriel Angela come up, but the real one, the sort of most recent one, was probably Jay Demerit, and then obviously John McKellen way before that. But this is exactly the type of player we needed. And I don't like to downplay Watford players here, but you could tell how much of an influence he was, because I don't mean to jump to the second half so quickly, but in that second half, no disrespect to Cathcart, but as soon as he come on, Rooney sort of found a little bit more space, and he put that one-on-one wide. So, Troost-Ekong dealt with Rooney in the first half, and Rooney he didn't have a sniff. So you could just tell he's so cool, so relaxed, and like so commanding at the back. I really, really think we're going to see one hell of a defender, one of the best centre backs in the league this season. I think that's a bold claim to make after 1 game and 5 games in, or 4 games, however many it be. But I'm telling you now, I think we've got a real player on our hands. I'm going to focus on certain individuals, Ben, because let's be honest with ourselves. The first half, I'd imagine if you'd struggled to get Isla to sleep, you probably would have stuck her in front of the TV for that first half, wouldn't you? Because it wasn't great, was it?
No, funny you say that. Once again, put the TV on. She fell asleep. She does not like watching Watford play, and we're actually winning at the moment. So yeah, it's a bit puzzling. But you can see why she fell asleep. There's no cutting edge again. It was lacking creativity. We didn't have a shot on target until the second half, when Joao Pedro put that ball in the back of the net, which we'll talk about. But
we will.
It was just poor. There was nothing really to talk about. There was maybe a penalty claim on Tom Cleverley.
I'm glad you brought that up, Ben. In your eyes, penalty or no penalty?
I was going to ask you the same. In my eyes, there's a bit of a coming together, but I think Tom Cleverley was trying to be clever, and he was trying to make it more of a penalty than it actually was. What do you reckon?
I've seen the old cliche. I've seen them given, and much like the one in the second half, which we'll talk about. But I think VAR, if VAR's in there, I know it's ifs and buts, but if it's VAR's in that game, I think it gets given.
Yeah.
I think Cleverley has been very clever, pardon the pun, but that's the type of experience that he brings to this side. He knows that he's not going to get that ball whatsoever, but he knows also that the player's got his hands all over him, so he's going down and he's thinking, come on, Jeff, points to the spot. But it wasn't to be. Mr. Eltringham thought otherwise and thought nothing of it. But it certainly wasn't a first half to remember. And this is a worry, as I'm sure you was about to say. It's not the first time that we've started a first half so sort of lacklustrous, and it's not pretty to watch. But one player I do want to pick out, I thought, I'm going to focus on 2 players here now, both wing backs. Firstly, I thought Jeremy Ngakia was very, very quiet. We didn't really utilise that right-hand side. Now, that might be because of who he was up against. But on the flip side, I thought we utilised the left-handed side, and therefore Kiko Femenia, I thought he was brilliant in that first half.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I thought Jeremy Nketiah wasn't very effective going forward. We've seen him
No.
much higher up the pitch, haven't we? And seen him look a threat. I thought defensively he was brilliant, but he didn't really offer us much going forward on the right-hand side. Kiko, he was getting forward well. I thought he had a good game. I feared for him when that tackle came in on him down by the corner flag. I thought it was a bit of a naughty challenge on him as well. But once again, it's no balance to that left-hand side. Every time Kiko got the ball, he was looking to cut back in, and it's not great. You can see we have missed out signing that left-back, which would have given us more balance. But going forward, he looked all right. He was getting in the box. I think he beat a couple of men to get a few crosses in as well. But yeah, we was trying to use the wide areas, weren't we? I think it was better second half when Senwa was getting involved down the wings, and he was beating the man and actually putting in a decent ball into the box as well. But yeah, second half as well. I want to get your thoughts on this one. So second penalty shout. VAR would have 100% given that.
VAR would have given that every day of the week and twice on a Sunday, Ben. Like,
Yeah.
I'm glad. Firstly, I'm glad we've skipped the first half, because I was really dreading talking about that, because that was really, really poor. But second half, how he's not given a penalty, I don't know. Do you think? I mean, this doesn't obviously take anything away from the fact that it was a penalty. But do you think, had George Evans, I believe the player was that got in the way, who was also the man that got booked in the first half for that tackle on Kiko. But do you think, had that not hit George Evans, do you think that would have been in? Or do you think that was going wide?
Yeah, I think that was goal bound.
Because that was a Chalobah rocket shot, which we've seen over the years. That one at Leicester springs to mind.
It was good play down the right-hand side as well. I think it was Sam who got the ball into a box, and then Pedro, once again, Pedro loves these little flicks, doesn't he? He doesn't get much connection on the ball, but he gets enough to like deflect it away from the defender. And then, Chalobah was completely levering that ball, and that was goal bound. That was going in. But, hit Evans, and his arms were away from the body. Like it happened later on in the game. I think Cleverley got a block in there. Was shouting for handball.
Yeah,
the difference was
chance.
Cleverley's hands were right up against his body. He knew exactly what was going to happen. He knew if his arms were out wide and the ball struck his hand, the ref would have blown for a penalty. Whereas Evans, he had his hands dangling everywhere.
Do you know what, though? I think that would have been typical of Watford, because I believe that was after we scored, which don't worry, listener, we are going to talk about that goal, but I believe that was after we scored the Cleverley penalty incident. But that would have been typical if that would have been given, but the one at the other end wouldn't have. But I think Cleverley was very clever, again, no pun intended, with the way that he sort of positioned himself and sort of made the block at the same time. So, it goes back to that thing. We've moaned about VAR sort of doing us over, if you like, but at the same time, VAR would have come in very, very handy last night, because that definitely would have been a penalty. One thing I do want to ask you though, Ben, who would have stepped up to take the penalty?
I have no idea. I was thinking that last night. We've seen Cleverley take a penalty for us before away at Everton, where he
I was going to say,
didn't he?
Let's not give it to him.
But yeah, that's a good question. I'd like to think that Pedro, it wouldn't have faced him. I think he would have stepped up and wanted to take it. I don't know who else would have.
It is a tricky one. I'm literally, as I ask you that, I'm looking at the starting 11 and I'm thinking, there's not really anyone here
maybe
that's
Quinner.
Nah, I don't know about that. I know we can lever a ball, that boy, but that might work against him.
He took a penalty against Oxford, didn't he, and scored?
Yeah, that's true. I'd like to think that it would probably be Pedro, because he needs goals this season. He's been doing brilliantly, which I think superbly links into what we're about to talk about. But I think it's a massive, massive season for him. He's been given a number 10 shirt. He obviously is going to get more game time. He's put 7 kilograms on now of muscle. So, he knows what he has to do. And those 2 weeks for the international break would have been absolutely massive for him. And I'm sure he would have been working on his game and where he needs to tweak things. So that would have been massive for him. So I probably would have said, if I was Ivic, I would have said if we get a penalty tonight, Pedro has it. If he scores, that's brilliant. A goal is a goal. So, yeah, it is a tricky question though. And listeners, if you've got any idea who would have took it, let us know. Who would you have picked to take that penalty last night if it was given? But luckily, Ben, which brings us on very, very nicely to what we're about to talk about. We didn't need that penalty decision to actually win the game. A absolute brilliantly placed shot from Joao Pedro for his second goal of the season. Firstly, we're about to obviously praise Joao Pedro very, very highly, but another man who needs praise is Ben Wilmot. Firstly, the fact that he's up there pulling the strings like that, and he played the ball. It was a brilliant one too. He even ran into the box just in case Joao Pedro wanted to lay him off and then get a shot in the box. Firstly, that is brilliant to see. But secondly, it is good to see that Ben Wilmot is pushing on so high. And I thought he was brilliantly positioned, and he played Joao Pedro in brilliantly. But the one mistake that Derby player made, I don't know who it was, but you do not step off any player there. But my words, how well did he take that shot, Ben?
Oh, unbelievable, mate. Just wow. Remember the name Joao Pedro.
Yes.
Just unbelievable, wasn't it? But yeah, before I go into the Pedro goal, but like you said, special mention to Ben Wilmot, picking up the ball on the left-hand side, joining the attack, driving with the ball, pulled several Derby players away with that run, which opened up the angle for Joao Pedro. He got out his foot and he just banged it in the top corner, didn't he? He put a curl on it and beat the keeper. Keeper had no chance at all. I read an interview during the week of Joao Pedro. He was talking about Wayne Rooney. He was saying when he was back in Brazil, he knows who Wayne Rooney is. He'd seen Wayne Rooney play. That was Wayne Rooney in his prime, scoring goals like that. And to be on the same pitch against Rooney as well, it's a special moment for him. But yeah, absolutely unbelievable strike, and that's goal of the season. I don't care how we're going to end up, like how we score goals for the rest of the season. That is unbelievable for a young man who's 19 years of age to pick up his second goal in English football. What a finish, and love the celebration too as well.
Oh yeah, do you know what, Ben? It will do wonders for his confidence.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, he's got his second goal, so that's going to do wonders for his confidence. But to score like that and to take it on, it was one of those shots, I thought, Ben, that as soon as it left his boot, you knew it was going in. I was quite, I was sitting at home last night, funnily enough, in East Midlands, because that's where I live, and I had a beer in my hands, shock, and I was sort of relaxed watching it, getting a little bit agitated because the game was getting on a little bit, and you sort of saw, I saw Joao Pedro had the ball on the edge of the box. Next thing you know, he's hit it, and I've jumped up, and I could not believe it went in. A little bit worrying that it's taken 76 minutes for the first shot on target, and ultimately that ended up in a goal. But to be quite frank, Ben, that's not our strongest starting 11, and we've won another game and got another clean sheet. I do not care if we win every game 1-0. A win is a win, right? Yes, it's nice to have more chances, and it's nice to, maybe score more than one. But I don't care, Ben. We've scored 3 goals this season and conceded 1. I don't know after today, because we're recording this on Saturday evening. I'm just looking through the table as we speak now. Only Reading have conceded 1 as well. So it's us and Reading that have conceded the least amount of goals this season. And I don't care if we win every game 1-0. But I think that will do wonders for his confidence. And especially as the games are going to be coming thick and fast, I think he's going to pick up a lot more. Don't be surprised if he goes on a scoring streak, Ben.
Yeah, I would be surprised, but it was a little bit worried to see that he ended up going off the pitch. I don't know if it was down to cramp or anything, so it would be interesting to see if he starts Wednesday night against Blackburn. But He's such a talent, isn't he?
Yeah.
There's another gem that we found. I think Sky Sports coverage mentioned that we picked him up for $2 million. So it's just another pinch yourself moment that we've actually signed someone for cheap money again, haven't we? But I watched the coverage after the game on Sky. They were all banging on saying 1-0 to the Watford. It's like what they used to say about Arsenal. It's like solid defence and that. But if we carry on doing that, I'll take it. It doesn't matter how you win. It's very solid at the moment. Saw the interview with Ivic afterwards as well, and the reporter was asking him about Pedro and saying, you got a special player in your hands there. And I loved what Ivic's reply was. It was like, yes, it's good, but I'm not going to put pressure onto him. He needs to keep working hard, and that's what you want. He wants to keep him level-headed. He doesn't want to get himself too carried away, and that's what we need. You don't want people putting too much pressure onto him. He's 19 years of age. Like, he might have blips in his career. He might go like 10 games without a goal, but you just don't want to put pressure onto the kid. If he carries on performing like this, magnificent. If he doesn't, just not jump onto his back, because he's very vulnerable at this age, isn't he?
He is. And you mentioned there he might go 10 games without a game and so on. Let's not forget a certain Mr. Troy Deeney, who's a Watford legend. How long did it take him to score in the Premier League? Best part of 10 games, maybe? Maybe not that long. But
Stoke away, wasn't it?
He ended up scoring 13 goals that season. So, it doesn't matter if it takes you a little while to get off the mark, or if you go a few games without scoring, you're a striker. Striker's position, as stupid as this might sound, is not just about scoring goals. If you're creating the chances as well to go with it, then you're doing a good job. Obviously, the main part is to score goals, but if Joao Pedro's creating chances, assisting, link-up play, then I don't care. But just on the injury, I saw on Twitter, I can't for the life of me think who it was that tweeted it. So if you're listening to this and it was you that tweeted it, I do apologise. Let me know and I'll apologise. But they did say that Pedro didn't go straight down the tunnel. He sat sort of in where the subs would sit. So it perhaps says that it's not as bad as we first feared. It looked more like cramp as well than a hamstring, which I can deal with because
he probably did it from his celebration, didn't he?
That looked right painful. That did. If I did that, Jesus, I'd be out for a year. My back could go as well.
Lucky he did it now and not back in the 80s when there was AstroTurf.
Oh, Jesus.
Imagine the state of his knees.
Oh, God, no, thank you. The other two things I want to talk about, because again, it was another game where it was very limited of chances, but I did fear a little bit when Tom Lawrence come on. I thought Tom Lawrence hasn't played for a while. He's sort of one of their star men this season. It would be typical if he come on and grabbed an equaliser, or even worse, grabbed an equaliser and the winning goal, because we know what he's like for club and country. He can strike a ball from distance. He did it a couple of times, didn't really trouble Ben Foster. The main two sort of key chances for Derby was firstly that one-on-one with Wayne Rooney. How Wayne Rooney's not put that away, I do not know. Like, a player of his calibre, of his standard, I would have put my house on Rooney. When he went one-on-one after sort of losing Cathcart, I thought 1-1. There's not a chance he's missing this.
That was a poor finish, wasn't it? That.
Yeah, I think the Sky microphone picked up his reaction to it. I'm not going to repeat it, but he sort of knew that he really should have finished that. The other heart in mouth moment, Jesus, I was sort of watching behind my hands. That free kick, I thought that was destined for top bins. But I will say this. Obviously, it went over in the end, but it looked as if Ben Foster had it covered. I know that sounds crazy because it was literally destined for top bins, but I think Ben Foster would have had it covered. Was you sort of panicking a little bit when Wayne Rooney was sort of stepping over that free kick in the 92nd minute? Similar distance for the one that he scored against Norwich as well.
Yeah, my heart was in my mouth the moment Ben Wilmot made that challenge. I thought, don't make the challenge yet. I think we went the whole game without conceding a foul on the edge of the box, and you just knew what Wayne Rooney did the week before away at Norwich. He stuck it in the top corner, and I really feared that it was going to happen again. And I was so relieved when I saw it go over and hit the top of the netting. And could have cost us massively there. So Ben Will got away with one there.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, a 1-0 victory away from home, a clean sheet again for Ben Foster and his defenders, bearing in mind that we had a new defender starting from the off as well. So there was a lot of, we spoke about it a couple of times, Ben. Who would you change? Who would you bring in? You don't want to mess around with the defence because they've not done very badly, so you don't want to mess around with them. But we changed it, and we still kept the clean sheet. And like Neil Warnock said, the very first game of the season against Middlesbrough, he said, I didn't think Watford were the better side, but it's the sides that grind out the results that end up going on and actually doing something in the league. And I think that's going to be very, very key. Yes, there was a lot of very frustrated Watford fans after that first half. And probably, I know it sounds strange, but, this is Watford fan base run about after all. But probably at the end of the game as well, there was a lot of Watford fans that weren't very happy. But like I tweeted from a personal account, it wasn't the prettiest, but they're the type of games that get you through that league. And look at example, I won't harp on about this too much, but Leicester, the year they won the Premier League, they went through that season scraping results. It wasn't pretty every single game. I think they only just beat us at Vicarage Road. I think Igalo scored. I think they won 2-1. But the season we went up under Jukanovic, there were some games that season, it wasn't pretty, but we got the result. I think a lot of Watford fans, because of Ivic's background, probably expecting, and because of the Tottenham game and the Scunthorpe game pre-season, we're probably thinking fast, free-flowing attacking football, passing, it's like Zola again. But I think a lot of fans have to realise it doesn't matter how we get the result as long as we get it. And 3 points after 5 games, if you'd have told me that we'd be on 10 points, I'd have snapped your hand off. Would you agree with that, Ben?
Yeah, massively. Like you say, it wasn't a great watch, but it was an excellent victory. The Championship's it's a tough old league. You've got to grind out results now and again. And like you say, that's what Leicester did when they went on to win the Premier League. We've been defensively solid once again. The foundations are finally being built at the back. We've only conceded 1 goal in 5 games. Ivic has got to take the plaudits for this. He has sorted that defence out straight away. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to build from the back. And he's done that straight away. Considering we had such a mess in defence last season, we've only conceded 1 goal in 5 games. That's exceptional. But also looking at this, we've still got the likes of Capu, Sarr, Hughes, Deeney, Parisia, Messina, even Andre Gray, all to return. Things are on the up for Watford, really. We can only get better. Yes, it's not that entertaining at the moment. But when Ivic has got those players to his disposal, I think it's going to step up and we're going to see more goals. Games are going to come thick and fast now as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ivic probably rotates the team slightly for Blackburn. Yeah.
No, I completely agree, Ben. The games are coming thick and fast. This is when the resolve of the team really, really, really shows. And these players coming back from injury, it's really, really going to show. So I am very, very, very excited. So, another win away from, I say another win. The first win away from home this season, another clean sheet, 10 points from a possible 5, sitting pretty in 5th at the moment, above Luton Town. Happy days, we can't ask for much more. And moving on from Friday's win at Pride Park, we've also had the domestic transfer window shut, Ben. So we've seen 2 players leave, further to the last conversation we had on the previous podcast. The first one in the form of Craig Dawson. He's joined West Ham on a season-long loan with a view to a permanent transfer. He made 30 appearances for us, and there was 2 goals and 6 clean sheets. Now, I don't want to go too much into depth because I think we'll be opening a massive can of worms. But personally, I don't think he's been as bad as people are making out on Twitter. Have you got any thoughts to add on top of that, Ben, about Dawson's reign at Watford?
Yeah, very similar to how we feel about Andre Gray and Nathaniel Chalobah. I feel like he's a bit of a scapegoat. I feel like people have pointed fingers at Dawson when it's not really been deserved. I thought since lockdown he was probably one of our most consistent performers. he did struggle when he first joined, but maybe that was getting back up to the speed of playing Premier League football. But yeah, I didn't like the reaction that we saw on Twitter when they announced that he left. It's not his fault. It was recruitment's fault last season. It was down to the recruitment that signed Dawson. It's not Craig Dawson's fault for his performances last season. Really, it's his own ability. He was thrown in at the deep end when we was a sinking ship as well. We was leaking goals left, right, and centre. It took a while to get up to speed, but once he got into the side, I thought it was pretty solid, and he was a threat in the opposition box as well, and he helped us get some points along the way. That last-minute goal against Leicester City, the overhead kick was brilliant. But yeah, just feel like he was a bit harshly treated.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that. As you say, he come into Watford, and to be fair, when he joined Watford, I thought it was half decent signing because it wasn't long ago that Leicester had a bid rejected for Craig Dawson, quite a high bid as well, and sort of whenever you play West Brom, because of the way that West Brom have always set up, as an opposition fan that Craig Dawson's going to be a threat. So I actually thought it was half decent. There was a game against, I think it was a Newcastle away, when Javi Gracia was still in charge, the 1-1, where I thought he was absolutely abysmal. There's no other words to put it, but ever since then, I thought he didn't really do as bad as people make out. He got a run of games, and I thought he was all right. But certainly, I don't think the abuse that he's got, or the criticism, I should say, that he's got on Twitter is warranted. And as you say, post-lockdown, I thought he was one of our better performers and more consistent performers. A real threat from attacking situations. And obviously, our first ever podcast was to talk about that Leicester game, and he won us a point. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to keep us up, but he was still a consistent performer. So, be interesting to see how he gets on at West Ham. Be interesting to see if he plays at West Ham, because I don't know what their defensive sort of areas are looking like. But I'll definitely be keeping a close eye on him to see if he sort of silences the haters, as they say. A more sort of heartfelt one next is Daryl Janmaat's been released with, I believe he had 2 years left on his contract. So he's been with us for 4 years. We signed him from Newcastle for $7.5 million back in August 2016. He went on to make 85 appearances for us, scoring 6 and assisting 4 times. Now, out of those 6 goals, surely 4 of them, it certainly feels like, could come against bloody Chelsea. He absolutely loves scoring against them. But Ben, this one is all fans can agree on. I'm gutted he's gone. Absolutely gutted.
Yeah, it's just a shame he couldn't stay fully fit. I think the other 2 goals that he actually scored was away to Southampton and away to Liverpool. But all Janmaat's goals as well, they've all been like, he's messy, hasn't it? It's unbelievable. Some of the goals that he scores, he loves running through the defence and just slotting it in. Like you say, I think 4 of those goals that came against Chelsea, and he just weaves in and out like the players aren't even there. It's a shame he couldn't stay fit. It was a bit weird last season, actually. I think Watford offered him a new 3-year contract last season, didn't he, at the very start of the season? And now we've got relegated and ended up releasing him, which is a bit of a strange situation. I feel sorry for him, but he probably wants to move as well. I think he's back in Holland. We're doing a bit of rehab now after his knee injuries, which we're probably close to being a year out of football now for him.
I think it is a year, yeah.
And we've got options at right back now, haven't we? So we can probably afford to let Janmaat go. But yeah, it's a shame. He was injured quite a lot, because when he was playing, I thought it was brilliant. He offered a lot going forward. There was maybe a few issues defensively. I think one stands out for me is, I think we went to Fulham away in the Prem, and I think he was to blame for one of the goals. He just stands off a bit too long. It stands off and doesn't get close to stop the cross or make a challenge, and that was a bit frustrating for me. But going forward, I thought it was top draw.
Yeah, Yeah, a bit like how, I'll never forget Gary Neville said when he was analysing one of our games about Kiko Femenia, he's not a defender, he could play midfield. And I think Janmark's the same. You look at some sort of wing backs, if you like, and they're much better going forwards compared to staying back. When unfortunately, in the role that Darryl had to play, the defending element was quite an important part of it. Glenn Johnson always springs to mind on the personal note for that. I don't know why.
Yeah, I
But
think it's the modern day fullback, isn't it?
yeah,
They're absolutely fantastic getting forwards and attacking, but they can't defend nowadays, can
well,
they?
I think we
Apart from
found
young Jeremy Nketiah.
I was just going to say that I think we found the right balance with Ngakia. I think going forward he's brilliant, and at the back he's just as good. So yeah, I think we found it. But I would have liked to have seen. I'm sure if Janmark was fit, I'm sure he'd be in and around the team, sort of pushing Ngakia, maybe making him a little bit better. Not that he sort of needs it, but that could have been something to watch. But yeah, gutted, and really hope it works out for him and he finds a club. As you say, he's in Holland at the moment. With his rehab, so I'll be keeping an eye on where he goes next, and all the best to him. And then in terms of players that almost went and were rumoured to leave, we had a late bid rejected from Crystal Palace, bless them, for Ismail Assar. They come in on deadline day with a £25 million bid. Like the Potso asking price was, I think at one stage I heard it was 40, and then I heard 45, and then you heard that we weren't going to accept any less than Richarlison, and I think Richarlison altogether was 50. So what on earth possessed Crystal Palace to think, I know what we'll do? We'll make a £25 million bid, less than the one that was rejected from Liverpool. Like, it's actually laughable. Like, I don't get what was going through the head at that time, man.
The moment I saw it come out, I think Adam Leventhal tweeted it, and another couple sources said about it. I checked my calendar straight away to see if it was April Fool's. I thought they must be pulling our legs here. 25 million for Ismail Sarr. They know how good he is. We paid more to sign him, and he improved massively last season. I think they was testing the waters, weren't they, to see if Watford were maybe looking to get a deal done. But we've said for a while now, if you're not going to stump up for the large amount that we need, we're not interested. And I don't think Gino would have wanted to send him to Crystal Palace.
Well, no, and Adam Leventhal did another brilliant. He's been brilliant, by the way, throughout transfer sort of window, and he did another article where it was largely about Ismail Assar. And I think Aston Villa was sort of brought up in the conversation as well. And no disrespect to these teams, rivalries aside with Palace and such, but if he's turning down Liverpool, he's not then going to go and join Crystal Palace or Aston Villa, is he? So, yeah, it is a bit silly, and they were probably testing the waters. But one thing I do want to say about Sarr, which says a lot about his character, is not once has he kicked up a fuss. Not once has his agent kicked up a fuss. Footballers now, Ben, as soon as they hear that a big move's on the way, especially if they've just been relegated and a Prem team is coming in for them, and Liverpool have come in, Man U have come in, so they're not small teams either. Usually, with the way that players are now, they're kicking up a fuss saying, I don't want to leave. They're not training, they're, whatever. But Ismail Assar and his agent, credit to both of them, because not once have they turned around and says, we want to move. They've been so professional throughout it, and it is refreshing to see, especially from a young lad, because it's mainly the younger players that sort of kick off a little bit. So that is good to see.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's normally for the younger players who are like the prima donnas nowadays, aren't they? Their teams get relegated, they throw their toys at the pram. But just look back to when we got relegated, the final whistle at the Emirates, he was crying. He obviously cares about the football club, and he was gutted that we went down. He could have thrown his toys out the pram and knocked on Gino's door and said, look, I want to move on, I want to bet myself, I'm too good for the championship. But he hasn't. He's knuckled down and he's fully committed, and just full respect to him and his agent for that. He's a very well respected young man, and he's got a massive career ahead of him, but his time will come. If he carries on playing this season, get probably about 30 to 40 games, try and get into double figures for goals and maybe assists, I think it's going to be a very good season for Ismail Sarr, and he's probably going to improve as a player.
Yeah, I've no doubt he will play Champions League football one day because he is that good. And there was also murmurs as well of him maybe going back to Rennes. I don't think this one quite got off the ground, but Rennes have just qualified for the Champions League. I don't know if they've been in it before. I know they've been in the Europa League because I think Sarr actually scored against Arsenal in the Europa League, but he will play Champions League football one day. And that the fact of him not throwing his toys out the pram, I think he doesn't realise a lot of people will take note of that. So, as you say, let's hope he can knuckle down, get some goals, get some assists, put in some real stellar performances, and get us back up to the Premier League. More importantly, and then in terms of transfers, the last sort of big news was Troy Deeney is sort of staying with Watford. Now, we've sort of seen a bit of a mixed bag in terms of the reaction to this news, Ben, on social media when we put the news out. It largely appears that a lot of Watford fans are very happy that he's staying. It goes without saying that I'm, massively over the moon. But also, it appears that a lot of people are sort of being a bit negative and saying, yes, he's staying because nobody's come in for him. And that may be the case. I mean, West Brom were rumoured, Newcastle, I think, were rumoured, Tottenham were rumoured. So, the interest was certainly there. Yes, we didn't have an official bid, but I think people need to overlook that and think, well, who cares if they didn't bid? Even better for us. But I think Troy now he knows that he's staying, I think he will let him get over this knee injury because I think he's still got a couple of weeks. Let him knuckle down, and again, if he can get a run of games, Ben, I'm calling it now. Minimum 15 goals this season, I think.
Yeah, I think you're not wrong there. I don't think the West Brom talk or Newcastle talk really got to him. I think it's when he heard Spurs were interested and they wanted a backup to Harry Kane. I think that caught his attention. He was thinking, European football being managed by Jose Mourinho. So you can kind of think, you can understand a little bit why his head was maybe turned. He's just got relegated as well, and he wants. But he's a father, isn't he? He wants to keep on providing for his family and end up taking big wages still. He could have even had a bigger pay rise moving to Spurs.
Yeah.
So you can understand from a business point of view why he probably wanted to move on. But look, that move hasn't materialised. And now he's wanting to commit and stay for the rest of the season. And Troy, he's going to knuckle down. He's the captain of his football club still. This club's very close to his heart. He loves this club. He's going to give absolutely everything to the cause, and I believe he can get to double figures as well. I don't know if he can get to 15, but I think he can definitely get to double figures. I'm only saying that because it's October now. He's missed probably the first 5 games. He might miss the next couple as well. So I think double figures is a realistic target for Troy Deeney. But I'd like to see him. I'm glad he's sticking around for one more season. I think he's still good enough for the Championship. He's got a lot to offer to the team still, but he's got a lot to offer to the team if we play him up front with someone. We cannot play him up front on his own. So I wouldn't mind seeing the likes of Joao Pedro and Troy Deeney linking up top together.
Yeah, you just know now that we've said this, that midweek game away at Wickham, Glenn Murray and Troy Deeney up top now. That would be some lineup. But yeah, as long as we play him up front with somebody, I think that is the key. And it'll be weird not watching us lump it up to Troy and then he sort of feed off the scraps what he can win. But yeah, massive news. Sometimes, although we haven't brought anybody in, which I'll talk about in seconds, although we haven't actually brought anyone in, keeping these sort of players are as good as new transfers in my eyes. Moving on to, in terms of players that we've not brought in, we've been rumoured with quite a few players. Barry Douglas ended up going on loan to Blackburn, who we're going to talk about in a little bit. Barbara Rahman, I don't know where he ended up. I think he went out on loan, but I'm not sure where he
stayed at Chelsea in the end.
Did he? Oh, yeah. Right. Okay. But just quickly, it did seem as if Ivic did an interview with Three Counties Radio after the game and said that we are looking at the free agents now to bring a left back in, which is good. I've not personally looked through the free agents at the moment, so I don't know who it would be that we'd be looking at bringing in. But we are looking at bringing a free agent in at left back. So that is very, very good news. We are going to talk about the Blackburn game very briefly because there's a couple of things that we need to make you aware of and a couple of things that we want to talk about. Just before we do that, you guys may have seen on Twitter, Facebook and our Instagram that the stat pack that we do had a new look. And to be quite honest, when me and Ben received it through the email, we didn't know what to say. We was absolutely speechless. So Stuart Cruikshank, if you're listening, thank you very, very much for doing those graphics for us. We have tagged him in on the post on Twitter. We've also put his profile on the Facebook and the Instagram posts as well. So make sure you go and follow him because he's a very, very talented lad. And we really, really do appreciate it. They looked absolutely fantastic, didn't they, Ben?
Oh, fantastic, weren't the words. Oh, like you say, gobsmacked when they came through.
Yeah.
We was talking to him at the start of the week. We pitched some ideas to him. We let him go work his magic. I didn't want to say we underestimated him,
No.
but we was very pleasantly surprised and it was completely blown away by the new look of it. Considering what we was doing, you was typing them out, putting them on Twitter, screenshotting them, putting them on the Instagram page. It looks so much better now. But yeah, we're starting to look a bit more professional now, aren't we? Hopefully, we can start sounding professional soon.
Yeah. We'll get working on that as soon as we can. But with that's one of many things that we're going to be working with Stu on. So keep an eye out for some other stuff. So yeah, Stu, if you're listening, thanks once again, buddy. Moving on quickly to the Blackburn game. Before we talk about what we're going to talk about, there will be a special one-off podcast. It's something that we're going to be trialling, whereby on Wednesday, the day of the game, Wednesday morning, you will be able to hear an interview that me and Ben did with Ian. We're going to let him pronounce the name of the podcast because it is quite a mouthful. It's something to do with Blackburn Rovers Supporters Club, but it is quite a mouthful. You'll hear that on Wednesday. We had a good chat with him to talk everything about the Blackburn game. So that will be available for you on Wednesday morning on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all podcast providers that you usually listen to us on. So keep an eye out for that. But we're just going to very quickly talk about it in terms of the game on Wednesday, because obviously we didn't see Sarr, we didn't see Capoue. I don't know if Hughes will be fit. We'll sort of know later on, sort of maybe Monday, Tuesday time when the press conference is done. What are you expecting them to come straight in, Ben, or what's your sort of feel around the team that we could field against Blackburn?
My thinking is we've got so many games coming thick and fast now. I can see 2 or 3 changes to the side, maybe even 4. I think Aiton's probably going to miss it because he came off injured. I'm not sure if Pedro's going to be 100% ready. If he's not, we've got Parisia coming back after his 3-match suspension. So he'll probably slot straight in. If Capoue's fit, I'll probably start him over Chalobah. There's lots of games coming quick. I'm not saying I want to drop Chalobah. I'll probably say that he deserves a rest. Sarr would probably come in. And my thinking is I would probably bring him in for Kiko Firmino, and I'll put Sema at left wing back. So we're not changing the formation or anything. There'll probably be 4 changes. I'll probably bring Cathcart in for Aiton, Capoue in for Chalobah, Parisia in for Pedro, and then Sarr in for Kiko. What do you reckon, mate?
Do you know what? I wasn't expecting as many as 4 changes from you, so you've completely stumped me here. I do think, in terms of the centre-back role, I don't know whether he'll risk Aiton because of, as you've said, he did have a slight knock. So I do think that Cathcart will come back in. So it'll be Wilmot, Cathcart and Kabasele at the back. I would also switch... I would switch Ken Sema, put him at left wing back, and then I would bring Sarr in as well. I would probably, from the last game, bring Capoue in for Quina, because I don't think Quina was as effective. So it would be Quina, Chalobah. It would be Capoue, Chalobah, and Cleverley in the middle as well. And I think you're absolutely right. in fact, I would quite like to see Perica start, but I think providing that Joao Pedro is okay, I think Pedro will actually start because he'll want a run of games personally. Ivic will want him to have a run of games and maybe continue that scoring form. But I do think that if Pedro does play on Wednesday, we can't expect to see him on Saturday against Bournemouth. And it depends how Ivic is looking at it. I know all games are important, but is he maybe prioritising one over the other, or is maybe Bournemouth a more difficult proposition than Blackburn? So it'd be interesting to see. I think whoever starts up front on Wednesday night doesn't start on Saturday, so it's going to be a very, very big risk for Ivic. And
we might even have Andre Gray back fit for maybe.
That's
I think
true.
It might be a bit too soon for the Blackburn game, but you never know. He could be back to feature for the Bournemouth game on Saturday.
And if that is the case, then I would very much expect him to sort of see him alongside Pedro, which would perhaps point in the direction of Perica starting on Wednesday night. So I think they're the changes that I'd make. It be Cathcart for Troost-Ekong, Capoue for Quina, Kiko for Sarr, and then move Sema to left wing back. And then, let's go with it. I'm going to go with Perica to start up front. Purely on the basis that Andre might be back, so I think Andre would work much better with Pedro. They're the changes that I would make. Only one that would actually differ to yours, but I do think it's going to be interesting how we sort of chop and change because these games are coming thick and fast. We've got Blackburn on Wednesday night, Bournemouth at home on Saturday, and then the following Tuesday or Wednesday we've got Wickham away, and then we've got Barnsley away. So this is where the business end of the season. Well, not the business end because it's only October, but you get what I mean. This is where they start coming thick and fast, and this is where we'll see the resolve and the depth of the squad maybe start to gel a little bit more. And this is where we need to pick up points because there are some winnable games coming up as well. I know there's probably no such thing in the Championship, but on paper. There are some winnable games, so it is going to be very, very interesting to see where we're going to go with that. And it'll also be interesting as well to see if we bring anyone in, from a free agent and whether they feature over the next couple of weeks. So it will definitely keep a close eye on that one. But in terms of that, I think that about wraps it up for this podcast. To sum it up, a brilliant win away at Derby, 1-0, clean sheet, another 3 points up to 5th above Luton. And we've got a tricky game coming up against Blackburn because they've had one hell of a transfer window. And it remains to see who we bring in for left back because I don't know what free agents are out there, but it definitely be one to keep a close eye out. And also, as we've said, talking of keeping a close eye, keep a close eye on our social media because we'll also be, working with Stu on some more graphics. So hopefully you guys like them and it'll make us look, as Ben says, more professional. So we'll get working on sounding more professional, but in the meantime we can certainly look more professional. And also don't forget as well, on Wednesday morning, a one-off pod where me and Ben spoke to Ian from the Blackburn Rovers Supporters Club podcast to talk everything about the game. So from now until Wednesday, come on you horns. Don't forget as well, we will be live on Instagram Live after the Blackburn game on the Wednesday evening to talk about the game, hopefully to talk about a win. And we'll be back with another podcast next week after the Bournemouth game. So, come on you horns.